welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki alongside Bridgette Readel, our wonderful, talented Ag Director, and Meteorologist extraordinaire, super stud, ginger, Justin Storm.
Can I get an applause button so every time that crickets thing comes up, I can counteract it?
You know, I have it. I haven't added it yet to the soundboard yet, though.
Okay, keep me in mind.
Well, we're digging out from yesterday's snow, and a nice little healthy band of warm air advection snow moving through the area right now. And
Wabba wabba?
Yeah, wow. And Bridgette, I know, we saw there was some moderate band, almost bordering on heavy snow, going through Hunter about a half hour ago.
Yeah, I know, because I had come back from a speaking engagement this morning. Sat down
you were
at my
driving
desk.
again. That's why.
It started after I was back, but let's just say I was very surprised at the size and intensity of the flakes here a short while ago. And I was going to mention that to you guys. What is going on out there?
Yeah, not much. It'll be out of here by 1:30. It's already starting to let up a little bit. So, yeah, it's a pretty quick-moving little upper-level wave. And then it's going to turn a little breezy behind that, so we'll notice maybe a little blowing and drifting of that snow as winds kick up out of the southeast. Temperatures today below where they should be for this time of the year in the teens. But, again, much better than it was yesterday where – I'll tell you what, areas, some of the highest snowfall report that I saw was Horace coming in at 15 inches. And let's see, downtown Fargo picked up a foot. Basically from Moorhead, there was about 12 inches in Moorhead through downtown and out into West Fargo, a foot, and some spots a little bit more than that. 9.4 officially in Fargo, and the heavy snow stretched all the way out the interstate. On 94, Jamestown picking up close to a foot. Same with Bismarck, 12, 14 inches. So a pretty narrow band, but it was a pretty healthy band. And with wind on top of that, I had drifts in my driveway and on the sidewalk up to my waist. So it was, it was pretty healthy. That's for sure. But not.
You know, I'd make short jokes, Dean. But
I was waiting.
So it's fine.
I'm a little disappointed. And even though yesterday's storm, that was the biggest of the year, and the biggest two-day storm we've seen since 2019 here, it doesn't compare anything to what we had on this date back in 1966. The blizzard of 66 started on March 2nd, lasted 4 days. I put an article on our website, WDAYradionow.com. You want to check it out. Do you remember? Well, we were kids. Bridgette, I don't even think Bridgette was born then.
No, Dean was a kid. I was still just a gleam in my daddy's eye.
Okay, I was a kid.
No, wasn't here.
Yeah.
Nope.
So back in 66, let's read y'all some stats to this. Winds were reported over 70 miles an hour continuously unabated for 4 days in some areas. Snow as much as 38 inches in the northeastern part of the state. Mounted to drifts of 30 to 40 feet high over the state. Many towns, obviously, and schools were closed. But the bad news is, I mean, that wasn't bad enough, but the loss of livestock was pretty bad. Estimated at 18,500 cattle, 7,500 sheep, 600 hogs. And on a farm in the eastern part of the state, 7,000 turkeys died. A lot of cattle suffocated in barns, which became completely sealed by the snowdrifts. And I'm sure everybody remembers the iconic picture of the guy standing next to the top of the telephone pole. That's a legendary picture. Now, there was other storms that rivaled it that had more deaths. The January 12th, 1888 blizzard left 112 people dead, lasted for 14 hours. And then the blizzard of 41, 70-mile-an-hour winds, but that only lasted 7 hours, leaving 39 dead. But that blizzard of 66, boy, I mean, if we had something like that now, 4-day storm with 70-mile-an-hour winds, oof. Now, what would? Okay, so you're losing all that livestock back then, and keep in mind,
right?
in 66, you didn't have weather radar, so you didn't really know it was coming like you would now. You get a lot more forewarning now than you would back in 66. So would that reduce the death count in livestock, Bridgette, do you think?
So let's think of a couple of things. One, they had smaller herds. Pretty much everyone had a farmer, a connection to the farm, and they had just a few animals around, right? So if they were given enough of a heads up, a lot of times you could bring the herd in, get them into a barn, etc. When those animals died outside, they weren't dying due to exposure for the most part. A lot of times that suffocation that you mentioned that happens in the barns also happens outside because their noses and mouths and eyes will cover with ice and they can't breathe and they will literally suffocate that way. So I think forewarning would have helped to some extent if you had the space to bring them in, but that wasn't always the case. But again, it's just surprising to see that so many were lost. They were probably buried, couldn't breathe in all of the snow that they were packed into. And you mentioned that iconic photograph. That was also an area where trains couldn't get through for days. People were stranded on trains on rail lines because they were just snowed in right where the train stood.
Just I can't imagine 70-mile-an-hour winds for four straight days
in winter.
And that's just incredible. I've had a few people email me. I know Larry, one of our listeners, emailed me, and he was giving accounts of what it was like. And he said he had, I think one of the things he was saying, they lived on Main Street, and the size of the drifts were amazing. And he had 20 people that I guess were stranded, ended up like living in their house for a few days. I mean, I can't imagine that.
So there's a story out of South Dakota, and this was a woman. She was somewhere in the Huron, South Dakota area where she grew up. And during that storm, she remembers being a little kid. And at that point in time, you could go out and turn the power on and off on your yard lights in the yard. And her dad saw that this storm was coming, and he went out and he says, somebody might need help tonight. And he flipped the breaker or the switch to turn on the yard light in their yard. There were students on buses trying to get to or from, I can't remember which one, district basketball games because of the time of the year. So that bus and several cars came into their yard because they knew they weren't going to get back to their destination. So she said they had an entire basketball team, several parents and spectators. They had somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 people in their house for those 4 days. And her dad had a rope between the house and the barn. They could still go out and milk some cows. Mom had a big old chest freezer full of food that they mostly cleaned out, but she said everybody pitched in, and they didn't have cable TV. So they played a lot of cards and other games and slept on the floor and just did what they could to be comfortable.
It'd be interesting to see.
35 people are coming over.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how we would handle that nowadays. We have a phone call, I believe, and we've got
Randy on line one. Randy, what's going on? You said you were 17 during the storm. You have a story about it.
Yeah, it was a senior in high school, and we lived in Hoopel, and the funny part of the whole storm was nobody could get out of their yards in the country. Town was blocked. We had to go out the upstairs window in order to get out of the house.
Wow!
And it was amazing. And if you could get out of town, you had a way to get out of town, whether you walked or snowmobile or whatever. You got out, away from that area. You could drive any place, but you couldn't go to a town. You couldn't get any place. You could just drive around out in the country, as long as there wasn't a farmstead or something there. We had a guy in town who had, and I believe it was called a Fox. It was about a 5-foot wide snowcat type thing, and he had a 20-foot trailer or a sled behind it, toboggan, and he had a cattle trough, water trough, on there, and he would fill it with water, and he'd take it out and water the cattle that were in the area, and he'd haul bales out to feed the cattle and stuff in the area. Yeah, it was something else. I mean, you kind of had to be there.
How long did it take to clean something like that up after the fact?
Well, Well, it took a couple days, like in town. I know a few years later, a guy I worked for with heavy equipment, he had cats, and he said he was out, days and days and days just cleaning out yards so people could get out with his dozer. It took quite a while. But like I say, once you got out in the country or out on the road, you could drive any place because there was nothing on the roads.
Crazy.
Interesting.
You guys, the equipment that they had, nobody had the size of payloaders, snow plows, snow blowers, anything the size that we've got today. So they
Right.
were working with substantially smaller equipment to move that amount of snow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, we had the county or the township had a four-wheel drive snowplow, and I had an uncle that lived about probably three or four blocks north of where I lived at the time, and he had gotten sick. And when the storm was done, they took this snowplow and they would back up, and they'd hit that drift. The drift was 12, 15 feet high, and they would hit that drift, back up, hit it again, back up, hit it again. They'd only go about 6 inches at a time until they got down to where he went. It's hard to believe. Just about had to be there.
That is crazy. Well, Randy, thanks very much for listening and calling in, and feel free to do so in the future. You have a great rest of your afternoon out there.
Thank you. You guys, too.
All right. Yeah, that would be I remember growing up in Chicago and the infamous blizzard of 79, and that literally shut down the city of Chicago, and many of the suburbs were closed for everything came to a complete standstill for a couple of days. And I believe that was like about 2 feet of snow. I can't imagine 70-mile-an-hour winds and up to 30-plus inches of snow. That's just, wow.
Oh, we could go from one extreme to another extreme, from a crazy blizzard to a crazy derecho that happened down in the panhandle of Texas a few days ago. Maybe we'll touch on that on the back half of our show, because we got to get a guest on with us. And Bridgette, do you want to introduce who that's going to be? Because I think this topic is going to be kind of interesting.
This is right up your alley, Justin. We are going to visit with Rob Snowden, and he is coming to us from Canada. Rob is going to talk with us about his company called Tech Brew. And if we've been watching some of his online videos showing harvesting equipment and even like small scale mushrooms and so forth, and how they're using robotics to accomplish that task. So we're going to visit with Rob when we come back right after this.
Stop by Family Dollar for the ingredients to a perfect lunch.
Show this weekend.
And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining us on this afternoon. If you'd like to be a part of the show, ask a question, join in the conversation, feel free to do so. 701-293-9000. Again, that phone number is 701-293-9000, or you can always reach us via email during or after our show at weatherorag@flagfamily.com. And at this time, we're going to bring our guest on, Rob Snowden with Tech Brew Harvesting Robots. Rob, how are you doing this afternoon? Thanks for taking some time to join us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. So tell me a little bit about what you do. What is this? What is Tech Brew?
Tech Brew Robotics is Try to keep it brief, but 23 years of 23 years of industrial automations. So using machine vision to design robotics and automation solutions in industrial environments. We're very lucky that a lot of our experience has been in food safe environments. So doing things like optimizing the cutting of cheese, stacking sandwiches in sandwich making factories, scoring bread dough. So we have some experience doing automations in food safe environments, and we are really focused on leveraging that experience and applying our skills to harvesting mushrooms and automating the harvesting of mushrooms, because whether people know it or not, pretty much every mushroom you've ever seen in a supermarket has been picked by a human hand. So
I'm sure that can be real labor intensive.
Absolutely. Mushrooms are a little bit unique in that they are grown indoors and have 28-day growing cycles. So it's not necessarily something we're familiar with that requires sun sun and water and the outside elements to reach kind of harvest potential in the fall. With mushrooms, they are grown indoors and do have 28-day growing cycles, and then are grown in vertical racking. So the harvesting of them is quite challenging from a human biomechanics standpoint, because you're always bent over and reaching in. Generally have a trimming knife in one hand, so harvesting with one and trimming with the other, and very, very, very challenging. And in order for harvesters to make money, they generally need to be north of sort of 50 pounds an hour. So when it takes kind of upwards of 10 mushrooms to create a pound, you can start doing the math pretty quickly on.
That's a lot of mushrooms.
That's a lot. That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, that's a lot of mushrooms to have to focus on. And okay, Rob, I know we're going to have tons of questions here to go along with this, but when you say that they're using robotics, is this like an eye that sees it? Is it some sort of AI that's training itself? How exactly does the robot know where to go after the mushroom?
Yeah, very good question. And so we are using commercial cameras. So it is machine vision. So essentially what we do is we send our harvesting arm has the cameras built in. So we scan what's below us, or the robot scans what's below it to identify mushrooms that fit the size diameter that we want to harvest. And once they've kind of scanned what's beneath, then they go and, using a very proprietary, a huge part of our secret sauce is our end effector, which is a combination of suction and unique twisting motions to then remove. Once the robot, first two-step process, robot scans the bed, finds the size of mushrooms it wants to pick, and then goes and using our proprietary end effector, removes the mushrooms from the bed.
And Rob, how many companies like yours are there out there? This seems like something rather new and rather unique. And is there a lot of competition?
Well, it seems to only be crazy Canadians trying to tackle this problem. Our biggest.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, so I will pump the tires of our biggest competitor is a fellow Canadian company based out in Ontario. So we're out on the west coast of Canada. We're in British Columbia, but there is a company by the name of Wysocki in Ontario that's taking a much different approach. Their solution is directly over top of the beds, whereas we're affixed to the sides of the beds and then send our arm in to both find, to identify, and then pick the mushrooms. So yes, we do. There is one other competitor, but it is a very, very challenging space. Certainly Wysocki and Tech Brew are not the first organizations to try to tackle this problem, but we're certainly closer than anybody else has been.
Right, and we have some of the footage of that. We're trying to get pulled up to show it to a few of our viewers. But this is a really cool looking concept, because it's basically just an arm with a vacuum suction cup. It goes down, it grabs the mushroom in these trays. I'm trying to describe what these trays look like, but it's just vertical pallets of mushroom after mushroom growing on it. How long does it take, or did it take, to come up and develop something like this and get it to actually work?
Well, yeah, the simple answer is we're coming up on 3.5 years of blood, sweat, and tears trying to solve this problem. But I do think I really appreciate you kind of teeing me up there, in a sense that what you're looking at there is what is referred to in the industry. And as you know, the Dutch are leaders. Holland is a leader in Europe as far as vertical racking and vertical indoor growing. And certainly that style of metal racking you're looking at there in the mushroom industry is known as Dutch racking. And what's nice is that whether mushrooms are being grown in Canada, the United States, Ireland, New Zealand, all over the world, that aluminum Dutch racking is the standard on modern mushroom farms. And so we had to figure out a way to attach a 600-pound robot to the sides of those growing racks. And then once secure and safe, then build in the machine vision to go find the mushrooms it's looking for. So right. Certainly, it's easy now to be pretty cavalier about it, but yes, it's been a ton of research, because there was no mushroom harvesting shop that we could go and purchase these tools from. Right? It is all proprietary, and certainly even when it comes to the Scara arm, which is a pretty standard application in robotics, they usually need more clearance than the foot that's between those racks in the aluminum racking. So yes, it has been a lot of research and a lot of trial and error to get to this point. But again, I think we're closer than anybody's been.
And you had kind of mentioned it's just you guys up in Canada trying to tackle this issue, or at least the foot runners on this. Is that where most mushrooms are grown? I have no idea where are these things grown? Is it kind of universal anywhere because they're grown inside, or?
I promised I wouldn't come on your show today and bore everybody with mushroom stats, but I promised I would.
It's okay. We're here for the stats, Rob. We're here.
Perfect. So I'll start with North America because we have some pretty interesting. What's unique is that, and maybe I should take a step back, that the mushrooms that we're really focused on are Agaricus bisporus, and that is a fancy Latin name for whites and browns. So button mushrooms that we're used to seeing in the supermarket, and browns start out, very, very small but then they become the portobellas. And another name for them is crimini. So brown gets a few more names, brown, crimini, and become portobellas. But whites generally have much less value once that stem starts to open. So you're familiar with the portobello, that you see the black gills, that stem has opened, it's become much bigger. Whites, you want to keep that. You want to keep the veil attached to the stem. So that's why they're usually a much smaller product. But where I'm going with this is that in our part of the world, in North America, in Canada, we have two major mushroom growing regions. So one is in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, which is about 4 hours from us. Fraser Valley of British Columbia produces 40% of Canadian mushrooms, and then southwestern Ontario. So sort of between basically Windsor and Toronto, in that sort of southwestern Ontario, they produce 50% of Canadian mushrooms in that region. So there's two regions in Canada that account for 90% of our production. And then very similar down in the States, you have a small pocket of southwestern Pennsylvania where 60% of American mushrooms are grown. So again, you can see that the industry sort of consolidates and does tend to, if you're going to be a profitable producer of Agaricus bisporus, white and brown mushrooms, you're going to grow them at scale. You're going to grow that. You're going to be producing tens of thousands of pounds a day, quite honestly. That is what most of our customers are doing. So they're big operations. They are huge industrial farms, and as I said, so what's nice is that it's pretty consolidated, and here in North America we've got just a few zones that we're very, very focused on.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if you're doing tens of thousands of mushrooms, I can only imagine how long it is to pick each one of those by hand. So we're going to hit bottom of the hour here real quick, Rob, but when we come back, we're going to do a little more conversation, digging deep into these robotics for harvesting these mushrooms. And if you have any questions you want to ask, join in the conversation. Again, 701-293-9000. Stay tuned because we'll be right back.
And welcome back, everyone, to WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus. So very glad you're with us today, as always. Thanks for tuning us in here on 970 AM, 93.1 FM. I am joined today by Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki and Justin Storm, Meteorologist Extraordinaire. I'm Bridgette, Readel Ag Director, alongside our guest today, who is Rob Snowden. Rob is with Tech Brew Robotics out of British Columbia. We've been talking about harvesting mushrooms. Not exactly something we do a lot of here in the Red River Valley, but there are some areas we're learning where that's a pretty heavy business. And Rob, what I know about mushrooms are generally a rather humid environment. How do these robotics perform in under all that humidity around something that should be kept dry? What's the key to success?
Certainly, we are designing our machines to IP67 rating, which essentially means that yes, it's a very good point that basically the IP67 rating is you can take a fire hose is sort of it's not just moisture, it's actually a pretty intensive pressure. So machines are built to withstand that. But also what's very unique about the mushroom industry is that once after that 28-day growing cycle, the final thing they do once the mushrooms have been cleared from the bed is they actually steam that room in preparation to kill all disease or any potential anything that can affect the next harvest. So that is a huge part of the industry as well, is actually a 2-day bake out of the growing rooms at the completion of each harvest or each flush. So yeah, it's certainly again, we feel very fortunate that we have some experience and 20 plus years experience of building these types of systems, and certainly we're designing the robot to both be washed down and capable of withstanding with withstanding the steaming that takes place in the room. Certainly, it's not going to be common practice to steam the robots because, again, they're meant to move between rooms, but certainly are waterproof and meant to withstand steaming on occasion.
And now your robotic arms as well, when they're in there, they're just harvesting the mushroom. They're not also washing them at the same time. That's a separate process, correct?
Yeah, and again, it's not necessarily a relevant fact, but mushrooms are about 94% water in and of themselves, and adding water to them, they really never are exposed to water prior to getting to the supermarket shelf, because adding water to them is going to make them slimy and it's going to have an effect on their shelf life. So believe it or not, they literally go from the bed to the packaging to the shelf, and that's something that, again, we should probably be washing our mushrooms when we get them, but they are not exposed to water between the growing bed and your kitchen.
And Rob, is there any thoughts of expansion in terms of maybe including harvesting something other than mushrooms? Is that anything that your technology is kind of looking into?
Absolutely, and it's a great question, and one that we're asked all the time, because there's lots of crops grown in vertical racking and in indoor environments. Certainly, and kind of a funny aside is we actually kind of got this journey started with the potential of picking tomatoes on the vine, and I know a lot of our competitors or a lot of people in this space are doing both strawberries and field crops as well. So the short answer to your question is we certainly are excited that the technology will have future applications, but really the proprietary end effector, that suction cup that we've created, is specific for the mushrooms that we're looking for. And just to be completely honest, the mushroom market, not only in North America but within Europe and around the world, is desperate, is really facing labor challenges. Producers are not capable. We're not able to grow supply, kind of given the labor restrictions and labor challenges that go along with the harvesting. So we really want to crack this nut. We really want to solve this problem first and foremost before kind of putting our attention elsewhere. But I certainly think that the motion with a different end effector will certainly have applications outside of mushrooms.
That's super cool. And I'm not too sure. Start off, I didn't even know that mushrooms were grown inside. But what do you know by chance, off the top of your head, any other things? We were kind of talking about other applications. What other things are grown indoors that could maybe this be used for?
And again, maybe just speaks to, well, I guess I can't pretend that we're in the Great White North in Canada here. I know North Dakota gets the 4 seasons as well, but certainly we are growing a lot of products indoors here in Canada. So leafy greens, but what is unique about mushrooms is that they are grown in compost. So they are grown in a medium that does have to be prepared. And again, most of these farms do have a composting element to their operations. So that's the combination of straw and generally chicken manure, a few other elements in there. But compost is a huge, and something that's very unique to the mushroom growing, is that mushrooms are grown in this very specific type of compost, whereas most indoor vertical farmings generally use hydroponics. So they won't even be using a soil, or they'll be using a different growing medium. So that is something that is unique to mushrooms.
And Rob, I want to go back to something quickly that you had mentioned earlier about so they go from directly into the packaging with your production there. Is that correct? Is that what you said? And
thank you very much for circling back on that. 100%. I mean, again, when we talked to the first producers and we said, why has nobody solved this problem? Why are humans still harvesting mushrooms in 2023? Kind of, it was 2019 we were having those discussions, but you know where I'm going with this. In the 21st century, why is it still a human operation to get mushrooms off a mushroom bed? And they said that the 2 problems are find the right mushroom to pick and pick it without damaging it. And we've come to learn that there's a few more elements to the process, and really what's nice about using machine vision to find the right mushrooms is that we're also using that same machine vision to identify on the stem, because part of the process is trimming the stem. The stem is attached to the bed, and so we use machine vision to identify the lowest area of dirt on the stem so that we can maximize stem length. We trim the stem, and then we do place in packaging.
That is wild.
And then
that's incredible. Now, are they clean? Now, you said they are not clean before they go into the packaging? They're not, you said.
That is right.
Okay, every package of mushrooms. Now I'm worried because every package of mushrooms I've ever purchased,
It's got poopy on it.
I don't clean them. I just, because I'm usually sauteing them, but.
Doesn't matter. That's poultry litter of some sort.
Oh, thanks a lot,
As long as
guys.
you cook it hot enough, you're fine. You're fine.
There is a 3 to 4 inch layer of. Sorry, my phone is ringing here. Please excuse me. There is a layer of peat on top of the compost. So they do actually, that's the final thing they add to the compost is a small layer of peat. So the mushrooms do actually grow out of the peat to give you some.
There you go. You got a coffee filter over that.
So, hey, Dean, you better start washing your mushrooms because the ones that are grown up at Forest River, North Dakota, that's turkey litter.
Great. Thanks. I was wondering what that seasoning was on those mushrooms.
Bridgette,
That's
I know
right.
you got a couple of email questions here, but I got to ask this one quick while we're still on this topic. You were mentioning about this machine vision. What is this? What is machine vision? How does the tech work? What is it doing to determine what's right to pick and what isn't?
Machine vision is leveraging camera technology. So obviously that's the vision component. And then we have proprietary software. We've done all the programming to then translate what the camera is seeing into a two-dimensional bed of shapes of and very circular shapes, as you can imagine. And then it's the parameter, what it dictates what is going to be picked is the diameter size. So we give the robot a diameter range of say 1 3/4 inch to 2 2/4 or 2 1/4 inch. And then it goes and finds every mushroom that meets that size parameter. And again, the machine vision is fancy name for camera, but then leveraging software to then take those images and identify where you want to focus the end effector.
Well, Rob, we have
does that help
some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that helps tremendously. And we've had a couple email questions come in, and one is, how much repair and upkeep has to happen with these robots? And do you feel that for those working on them, does that require a background in agriculture or in some sort of farming? Or do you feel like we're just here to work on this piece of equipment? It doesn't matter where you came from.
Yeah, so obviously we haven't been at it 10 years quite yet, but the shelf life that we're looking for on these machines is a 10-year shelf life, and looking for farmers to enjoy return on that investment over a 3-year period. So we do anticipate a lifespan of 10 years on these machines. And outside of daily cleaning, which is really just on the elements that are interfacing with the mushrooms, and that is obviously just a food safe element there. So there will be some daily cleaning of the parts that actually touch the mushrooms. But outside of daily cleaning, we're really looking at quarterly proactive maintenance. And yes, these are complex machines that do need to be maintained, but quarterly maintenance is sort of the big overhaul, and then just daily cleaning and daily maintenance as you go.
Rob, this has been so much fun to visit about something so very different when it comes to the crop and the harvest. Could you share with folks, I mean, I know where I found your information, and that was in an article with the Future Farmer magazine, but where would folks find you if they want to watch your awesome videos and so forth?
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that, Bridgette. And part of part of our exposure in that publication was we are members of a Canadian Technology Accelerator. So we're very, very thankful to have been selected to participate in that, and that was part of our founder and president's trip down to North Dakota in late 2022. So yeah, the easiest ways to find us, we're up in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, which is halfway between Vancouver and Calgary if you're driving a car, and we are at techbrew.com. If you would need a slightly longer URL, techbrewrobotics.com or techbrew.com. Either one will get you to the website. Certainly on YouTube, we've got some footage of our robots picking mushrooms on a commercial farm down in the Fraser Valley, down in Abbotsford, British Columbia. So I think between the video and the website, hopefully people can find us and learn more about what we're up to.
I think they will, and we really appreciate it. Again, our guest today has been Rob Snowden. He is with TechBrew Robotics out of British Columbia. Folks, we're going to catch up with the American Ag Network and check in on the markets, and we'll follow up with weather and ag headlines after that.
On the next Coffee Club,
Hey, welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I want to thank everybody for joining us. What an interesting guest. And Bridgette, I don't know if you will know the answer to this. I meant to ask Rob before, but we were running short on time. Do you know what the acreage is or square footage is for his operations? Any clue?
Boy, that's a great question where I can probably email Rob and find an answer. But considering they're doing it vertically in what looks like big aluminum racks, that would be very interesting to see how high they're stacked and how big that heat room is, if you will, because they've got to have the right moisture and temperature for it. So I will email Rob and ask him if he can answer that for us.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have Brian. We have a caller, Brian, on line 1. Brian, go ahead. What's your question today?
Bridgette, thank you for taking my call. Say, I heard you on the AM flag this morning talking about those cattle in New Mexico that are going to be hunted down and killed. My question is, and I apologize if it's long-winded, if you release a hog, a domesticated hog into the wild, I believe it's within one generation that those things go from being domesticated to wild animals. Now, these cattle have been out in the wild for, you said, from the 1990s sometime, and they've built up a tolerance to the drought and are obviously surviving and thriving in this drought. Don't you think that these cattle should maybe be captured and either bred with domesticated cattle or maybe studied to see if they're doing something or something happened to them so they can withstand drought conditions better than domestic cattle?
So, Brian, you are on a great track right there. And so when U.S. Fish and Game and Wildlife visited with folks with some of the landowner and Cattle Alliance groups in that area, that was a proposal from the cattlemen was, shouldn't we be able to go in there? It's going to take longer and it would probably be more expensive. It's very rough terrain. They'd have to go in by horse to try to bring some of those animals out. Now, what you said about them being more feral because they've been in there since the 90s or being feral, could they use some of that genetics? Potentially they could. And that was also a question that some of the cattlemen had is maybe we should figure this out if these are useful to us in a long-term way. Also, there are studies that are underway. There is a specific gene that has been isolated that cattlemen are starting to use, and they want to be able to transfer across breeds to have better drought tolerance. So it would be a comparison of what we have found in university studies versus what could potentially already be happening in the wild. So I think you pose a great question, and I know that the ranchers in that New Mexico area wanted to know more about it before U.S. Fish and Wildlife went in under pressure of the environmental groups and just did a basically they had 150 fatalities when they knocked out those animals. So thank you for calling, Brian. That was a great question.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too, Brian.
Now, and Bridgette, could they have used those for slaughter? I mean, could they have used the meat or no because they're feral?
Okay, so that's a great question as well. I think that if you think about feral hogs in Texas, which Brian mentioned in his call, a lot of times people don't want to eat those because their meat doesn't taste very good.
Okay.
That may be the case with these beef animals, but we don't know that yet. I don't think that they have been slaughtered to find out. Could it have been a situation where they may have done that? Potentially, but the plan that U.S. Fish and Wildlife had was to shoot those cows, leave them lay out there so that they would naturally decay or be eaten by predators unless they were close to a water source or hiking trails, etc., or an environmentally sensitive area. That was the only time they'd planned to remove those carcasses.
Well,
I think if Brian...
That's too bad.
Go ahead.
No, because I would,
really,
like you said, why not gather them and do more studies on them instead of just, knocking them off?
The pressure was on to get them removed, and I think they wanted to do it faster than what the case might have been in trying to go in and try to round them up and bring them back out. And you may not have been successful in getting them all.
Right.
They might not be successful in getting them all by shooting them out of a helicopter too. And for Brian, it sounded like he maybe had another question or two. And Brian, I encourage you to send me an email, ag@flagfamily.com, and make sure that we've answered everything that you're wondering about. We can always make sure to bring it up tomorrow morning when I do the morning spots on WDAY or the Flag as well. That'd be fine.
Yeah, that was a really good question.
Yeah, it was, and that's true. Why not? And I think Brian had a question on the Flag this morning. I kind of stepped in on the back end of it. Like, and maybe it wasn't him. Maybe we were talking about this off mic. That why not use for food like just to feed the hungry or for the food bank or something? Use it for something good instead of. And I know, like you said, Bridgette, that was their decision, time crunch and whatnot. But
sure. And we don't know the overall health of the animal, right? Because they haven't exactly been. No one's been keeping an eye on them. If in fact they may have maybe carrying a disease or a pest like any worms or anything like that. We don't know that at this point.
Right. Right.
But good questions, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Super good question.
Absolutely. Let's quick recap the weather here. That band of snow is now pushing east out of the valley and in areas of northwestern Minnesota. So any remaining snow will just be kind of flurries for the rest of the day. And then we're left with breezy conditions, maybe a little blowing snow in open country for this afternoon. Temperatures in the teens. The good news is we warm into the 30s Friday, and then right around 30 Saturday, Sunday. Our next chance of measurable snow comes in here Sunday, late in the day, more so Sunday night into Monday, where we can see a few inches of snow out of that. We'll keep a close eye on it because a couple of our models bringing heavier snow amounts just to our west, and that would be Sunday night into Monday. So all in all, a quieter and warmer forecast, at least for a couple of days.
It's going to be nice. I'm ready for a couple of days in the upper 20s to low 30s. And, I even saw that, what is it? Let me check my sheet here before I just ramble off a random date. Yeah, it's tomorrow. Some of our models were trying to push mid-30s.
I saw that.
I don't buy it with the cloud cover and the fresh snow.
Not with fresh snow. It'll be tough, but there will be some areas that wouldn't surprise me to hit the mid-30s. But yeah, it's hey, we'll take low 30s at this standpoint.
Low 30s will feel great.
Yeah.
And
we have time for any ag topic?
I think
can we hit one real quick, Bridgette? How can a kangaroo help lower cows' methane?
Okay, so this is a study being done out at Washington State, and what they did was they took baby kangaroo poop, they took a culture of it, they mixed that with a known methane inhibitor, and then they were putting that in a simulated cow's stomach, and instead of producing methane, it was producing acetic acid, and the acetic acid is good for building muscle growth in a cow or in a beef animal, because that's what we then harvest as meat, right? So that was actually a better thing than having methane, was it going to acetic acid. But I don't know, as Kevin said earlier this morning, what big brain thought it was a great idea to take kangaroo poop and
feed it to a cow.
Interesting. Interesting.
Oh, that is great. Well, maybe we can touch on that one a little more in detail tomorrow when we return from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That'll wrap it up for us today. Brian, thanks for giving us a call. Do it again in the future. Jay Thomas Show is coming up.
970 WDAY AM and 93.1 FM. Fargo Moorhead.